Let's talk about yesterday's happenings. The governor has been saying, come hook or crook, maybe that's a bad way to put it, school teachers will get a raise in this budget, and it looks like that was, what he had to do almost, because it appears that the university system, Mitch, is going to be receive the blunt of the blow in transferring money from the university system to the public school systems. Is that a fair way to put it?
The UNC system would get some of the blow. They're actually, to make this happen, there are a couple of pieces that have to get shifted around. And part of it is about $49 million that would be taken out of the budget for the UNC system. There's also a much larger chunk of this, about $120 million plus, that would be removed from proposed spending on health and human services programs. And there's some money that's going to be going toward the teacher pay raises, somewhere in the neighborhood of $165 to $170 million that would come from surplus money that had been expected for this year. So, yes, the UNC system takes a hit. It's one of sort of three big chunks that would be seeing some changes so that McCrory can make this teacher pay raise happen.
I want to come back to the university system question, but let me ask you, how in the world, with Medicaid overruns and the problem that they're having with trying to get their arms around Medicaid and all that we've heard about the Department of Health and Human Services and what they're doing there, how are they able to find and again, this is the governor's budget. This is Governor McCrory and Art Pope's proposal. Doesn't mean the legislature is going to ratify this. In fact, we can say with some assuredness that they won't. But, it'll be kind of a blueprint for where they go from here probably. How in the world do you get $122 million out of DHHS with all the Medicaid problems?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I think part of it is because a lot of that money is in silos, and so that it was money that couldn't be shifted to Medicaid anyway. I mean, you would think that when you've got the Medicaid shortfall, what you would end up doing is taking some other money from Health and Human Services and moving it toward Medicaid. My suspicion is that because some of the money is in particular silos, it can't go to Medicaid, and thus it is ripe for being targeted for other higher priorities. But you're right about Medicaid, and I do want to bring up, Henry, an important point, that in the past 4 or 5 years, what we have seen with Medicaid is these huge unexpected cost overruns that sometimes were in the neighborhood of, like we saw last year, $400 million. Several years ago, House Speaker Tom Tillis pointed to a Medicaid overrun of about $700 million. This time around, they're saying, and take politicians' words with a grain of salt, but they're saying that this time around, the Medicaid overrun looks like about $70 million. No one's happy about that, but it's certainly less of an overrun than they've had to deal with in the past and a little bit more manageable. In fact, manageable was the key word that Tom Tillis used during his opening day press conference to talk about the budget, and neither he nor Phil Berger, the Senate leader, who are going to be the ones doing the bulk of the work, sort of taking McCrory's budget, giving it to their own budget teams and saying, here's what we want to do with it. Neither one of those guys seems to be all that excited or animated about this revenue shortfall. It may be just because they're the ones in power and they don't want to let on that they're concerned, but certainly no one's getting a hint from them one way or the other that they think that there's any really big problem with the revenue shortfall.
Are the school teachers, what are you hearing about the proposal? When the governor came out with his first-year school teachers plan earlier this year, the NCAE just started bouncing off the wall. We had school teachers, veteran school teachers phoning in here saying it's unfair, mad with the governor, yada, yada. Yesterday, Rodney Ellis, 5 out of the last 6 years, school teachers haven't had a raise. And then, of course, I was quick to remind folks this morning that, Democrats were in charge 5 of the last 6 years. But
right. and the 1 year when they did get the raise, it was in a Republican budget that Beverly Perdue vetoed.
That's
so
right.
I
forgot about that.
Yeah, that's that's the one raise they did get.
So is this going to calm the waters, or is it? I just. Already Roy Cooper, who clearly is already running for governor, has put out a a statement saying, they're not doing enough for school teachers. And so, you just have to laugh at that, don't you, based on the way that the Democrats dealt with school teachers and the fact that the Republicans are getting so much blame after 1 year in total control?
Yeah, I think that there certainly is a lot of this, wait a minute, pot calling kettle black issue. But, Henry, I think you have to break down this teacher pay raise proposal from McCrory into basically three parts. One part is the idea of raising the early career teachers' salaries a lot and very quickly. And I think there's pretty much unanimous agreement that that's a good idea. I don't think you're going to hear the teachers complain about that. You referenced the fact that one of the big complaints was that the initial plan that came out a couple of months ago didn't really say anything about the veteran teachers, although Governor McCrory and legislative leaders said, hey, well, we want to do something for these veteran teachers too. We just don't know what we're going to be able to do yet, and we certainly want to tackle the early career teachers first. So I'm not sure that the governor's proposal for the veteran teachers is going to make them thrilled. You referenced Rodney Ellis from NCAE. Others have described it as paltry, or as I heard on one local television station, poultry, which I didn't know what it had to do with
chickens.
But then there's the third piece, and this will be the
that
most
one. Please tell me that wasn't William Barber that said that.
No, this was actually a reporter,
okay.
And I will not mention his name because I don't want to embarrass him. But he said that teachers were describing it as poultry.
As poultry, yeah.
I thought, well, okay.
Well, maybe it was turkey, not chicken. I don't know.
That's right. It could be. It could be the folks around the poultry plant. But the third piece, which is going to be the most interesting part, is this whole career pathways for teacher program that the governor wants to move forward with. And this is the idea of really just shaking up the whole way you pay teachers so that the best teachers in the future would be able to get a lot more money for doing things like being a teacher mentor, getting the national board certification, getting a master's degree, but only a master's degree in your subject area, not this general master's in education or master's in public policy. But if you're a science teacher, getting a master's in science. If you're a math teacher, getting a master's in math, something like that. So building in pay raises of that sort. If you followed the news conference that Governor McCrory had talking specifically about the teacher pay plan before the budget came out, he had three examples of teachers out in the audience. He pointed to the three of them and said, in one case, the person could make $12,000 more. In one case, $14,000 more. In one case, one of the teachers, because of the various things she did, would be eligible under his plan to make $20,000 more a year. And I think that's going to be the most interesting piece of this moving forward. The budget this year only puts aside a few $1 million to pilot this. But if this moves forward in the future, that would be a big game changer.
Let's go back to the cuts to the university system. And in full disclosure, Mitch, I need to say that I'm on the UNC Board of Governors, and I'll be one of the people having to deal with this cut. The Board of Governors is now being told by the governor, if this budget were to pass, I want you to go find $49 million. And when you look at that, that's less than 2% of what the state puts into the UNC system, which is now about $2.6 billion, something like that. And, of course, people also may not realize that the total budget for the university system is really $9.5 billion for the 17 campuses in the UNC system. So when you're talking about a $49 million cut, you look at that and you go, well, that's manageable. It's not that much. But the issue is this. The chancellors are saying and have been saying that we're losing some of our best and brightest professors to other states. That's one of the issues. The other thing is, most states now have stopped the bleeding with their university system and started going back in the other direction and started increasing funding for the University of for the university system. The UNC system has been widely accepted across the country as the best public university system in the country. What's the truth about that? What's the feeling about that? I mean, when you spread a $49 million cut over 17 campuses, surely the chancellors will be able to find it. But already Tom Ross and some of the chancellors are, wringing their hands about it. I mean, is there a fundamental and philosophical shift in the way we're funding higher education here? Is there now a belief, is the message being sent, we're not spending enough on public education because we're spending too much on higher education? Do you think that's the message we're getting from the state officials?
That may be the message that you're getting. I'm not sure that's the message they're sending. I think what happened was this teacher pay raise issue, and also we haven't mentioned it, but doing something about the coal ash and addressing some other issues, patching up Medicaid. All of those are such high priorities that they said, okay, well, where are we going to find the money given the revenues that we have coming in? And the university system is a big pot of money that stares you right in the face about where you can go to get some money. I don't know that there is necessarily a philosophical sense that the university needs to be plucked, but as you just mentioned and elaborated, a lot of people who are supporters of the university system are likely going to take it that way. And I would think that UNC system president Tom Ross would be wise to have you as one of the people talking to legislators about why they should make that particular adjustment.
Oh, trust me, I'm a talking.
Yeah, I'm sure you are. I heard it, and I thought, well, hey, here's a good lobbying pitch for the legislators about why they should keep the money.
Well, there were some other cuts in that DHHS budget that were getting ready to just really hammer the Brody School of Medicine and Vidant Health down here. We got involved in that lobbying effort 2 weeks ago, and but it's just. And I know that the state is having real problems, but don't you sense that there's just this feeling that, well, we can go get some more from the university system because it's bloated anyway? Isn't that kind of the message that we're receiving?
I think some people definitely have that idea that the university system has had a very good run for a number of years, and in some quarters there's a sense that perhaps it benefited at the expense of some other agencies and even K through 12 education. Whether that's true or not, I think there is a perception among some that that's true.
Yeah.
And that, of course, will weigh into the decisions as the legislators decide what to do with Governor McCrory's proposal.
Let's talk about a couple other things. Again, Mitch Kokai from the John Locke Foundation, the host of Carolina Journal Radio. You hear on the weekends here on our stations in eastern North Carolina. And Mitch is very knowledgeable about what's going on. As we look at this budget, were there any other surprises? I've heard that there were some things that were in the budget that the governor put in yesterday. I heard there was something about some additional money for the state fairgrounds in Raleigh that nobody knew about. Were there any surprises in that budget? Maybe some of Art Pope's friends that they wanted something out of Raleigh that got put in there. I don't know if it's true or not. I just got text about that last night.
Well, I don't know the item about the fairgrounds. It's not something that I've looked into yet, but I'll take a look at it. In terms of surprises, I would say one pleasant surprise on our side from the John Locke Foundation's perspective was that nothing was said in the budget about the film incentives program. The film incentives that North Carolina has are scheduled to expire at the end of this year, but there's a lot of lobbying going on to extend them in some form or other. And Governor McCrory has not talked a whole lot about it, but his Commerce Secretary, Sharon Decker, has talked about wanting to continue the incentives. And so one was suspecting that there would be something about the film incentives in the budget. It's not there, and so that's going to be addressed outside of the budget process. In terms of concerns, one of the concerns that we had looking at it initially was that there seems to be a bit too much of a reliance on federal money to help pay the state's bills. That's been a trend that's been going on for years and years, and we wish that the state government would rely less on Washington, which has its own much more extensive budget problems, because if the feds eventually decide we can't pay this bill, that means the state's going to either have to make major cuts or find more money here to pay for things they've been relying on the feds to pay for.
Mitch, I think it doesn't make any difference as long as the Republicans are in charge in Raleigh. There are going to be these protests. It's just too opportunistic for people like William Barber from the NAACP and Rodney Ellis from the North Carolina Association of Educators and these other groups like that are going to protest no matter what. But I mean, is there really much to protest in this year? I mean, what is going to be the Moral Monday theme when Reverend Barber brings his troops out and everybody piles out of Chapel Hill into their cars over to Raleigh on Monday night for the protest this year? What are they going to be screaming about this year?
Well, I can't tell you exactly what they're going to say from week to week because they'll be there for every Monday. But we can get a sense of what the general theme is going to be overall, and that is that Republicans have put in place tax cuts for millionaires, and because they did that, the state faces a structural budget shortfall and is going to be unable to meet its critical needs in the future. We've already heard that for several weeks.
And now that you've said that, address the truth or lack of truth of that.
Well, certainly, if you look at the tax reform package that was put in place last year, there is truth in the fact that millionaires get tax cuts, but so does every income group in North Carolina. If you look at the tax reform package as a whole, what we've done at the Locke Foundation is we asked some economists to plug all of these numbers into formulas, and they have a specially designed tax formula for North Carolina where you look at what's called the dynamic effects. So you don't just say, hey, there's a 5% tax increase, you're going to get 5% more revenue. They look at, well, if there's a 5% tax increase, what effect does that have on people's behavior? And then how much revenue do you get? And the same thing's true for a tax cut. They plugged in all of the numbers from the 2013 tax reform package, and they found that in every income group, starting at $0 to $25,000 a year, $25 to $50, and then going all the way up to the category of $200,000 a year or more, every one of those income categories saw a tax cut. I mean, that does not mean that every person sees a tax cut, because there are some people in certain circumstances who will lose a particular break that they took advantage of, that was offered to them in the old tax code that they don't have now. But if you look by income category, every income category gets a tax cut. It is undoubtedly larger for people who were at the higher end of the income tax scale, but that's because they're the ones who are paying the most. And if you go from a tax system that has 6%, 7%, and 7.75% tax rate on personal income, and cut it down to one single flat rate of 5.8%, lower than the lowest rate we had before, yes, the people at the top are going to get a larger tax cut because they were paying more.
Is this why we have shorter projections on revenue than were anticipated? Because we keep hearing there was a $440 million shortfall in revenue. Did it have anything to do with that, or was it more about missing retail sales projections?
It does have a little bit to do with the tax cuts that were part of the reform package, because a lot of that shortfall is because of income tax withholding.
Yeah.
Most people noticed this year that if your salary remained the same, that you actually got higher take-home pay because the state's taking lower tax.
Right.
But
taking less out of your paycheck.
Yeah, if it's taking less out of the paycheck, you're keeping more of the paycheck to spend the way that you want. But the legislative leaders have said, and even said yesterday, that the $445 million was within the cushion that they set up last year, knowing that there was a possibility that they would see some lower revenues because of the tax reform package.
Mitch, we're almost running out of time. One thing, that I wish, and you guys may have already done this and I missed it, one thing I would really love to see the John Locke Foundation do is undertake a study on how much revenue the state of North Carolina is losing because people are buying stuff online. Have you guys done anything on that? Is North Carolina losing a bunch of tax revenue because people are buying from Amazon and other big online companies and not paying state sales tax? Is that happening?
We haven't done a study on that, but the legislature has done some work on that. In fact, has been working on ways to ensure that Amazon and other online retailers do collect state sales tax. There is some work on that front, Amazon fought it for a number of years, but if I remember correctly, that has been, at least in the case of Amazon and some of the other big retailers, resolved.
How can Amazon fight that? I mean, how can they? How does Amazon is actually screwing their own customers in North Carolina if they don't charge them a sales tax, because it's going to create a need for other taxes to go up eventually if they don't do that. I mean, and as Amazon, which has gotten so big, if they don't charge state sales tax, it seems to me like there needs to be a federal effort to go after these guys.
Yeah, very briefly on this, the issue from the state perspective before this issue was tackled with Amazon was that to charge the sales tax, there had to be some sort of what they call nexus, that you had to have some sort of physical plant in North Carolina to be assessed the tax. And, of course, Amazon doesn't, but some stores that sell online do, like a Best Buy or something like that. You may have a store, but there's also the online presence. If you had
that's kind of a crazy idea, because it would basically be an incentive for Amazon not to locate here if they ever wanted to put a plant here or something.
Right. That's certainly they would have that negative.
Google located here. Google's got a big operation in North Carolina, so it didn't keep them from coming, I guess.
Sure, but then the argument from the Amazon side, of course, was that if they had to start taking in sales tax, then there are so many tax jurisdictions all around the country. How would they ever be able to deal with it?
Yeah.
I don't think that argument carried weight with people who, especially our supporters of the brick and mortar stores, saying, "Wait a minute, you're getting this unfair advantage.
Well,
we don't buy your argument. You can deal with it."
I didn't mean to get a sidetrack. One last question, and I'll let you go. I've kept you longer than I said that I would. The governor's budget, for people who don't understand how this works, it now goes to the Senate. The Senate will mark it up or start over again and just throw it out completely, then send it over to the House, and then the House and the Senate will go back and forth. The governor has ultimate veto power over whatever comes out, so they can't totally ignore his budget. But I mean, the state Senate. I mentioned earlier this morning, I heard one of the most powerful members of the Senate, the Rules Chairman, Tom Apodaca, say last year that he was using the governor's budget as a doorstop. So how does this happen now? Does the Senate take the governor and Art Pope's projections here in the budget seriously, or do they just throw it out and start over again?
Well, I have heard through the grapevine, I don't know that this is true, but I've heard through the grapevine that the Senate would like to have a budget proposal in front of its members at some point next week. And if that's true, then it's likely that they will peruse the governor's budget plan, but that they already have a lot of ideas of their own.
Peruse.
And we also have, peruse. And we also have to remember that unlike in an odd-numbered year, in an even-numbered year, Henry, this is an adjustment to the budget plan that's already in place.
That's right.
There is no issue of the state shutting down its government on July 1st because there is no budget. There is a budget that is in place for the year that starts July 1st. All of this is designed to tweak what's already in place, which makes it a little bit different.
But the school teacher salaries and government employee raises, that's a big tweak.
That is a very big tweak, and we've seen in recent years that there often is a very big tweak. But it is important to note, if they don't reach an agreement by July 1st on this new plan, there is a plan already in place. It would not be a case of having any chance of some sort of government shutdown.
Mitch, we got to go. Great stuff. Thank you for following this. We'll be reading what you write on CarolinaJournal.com and listening to your radio show here on the weekends on Carolina Journal Radio. Mitch Kokai, thank you, my friend.